Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wang, and today I'll be talking about the power of flogging, a preliminary study comparing the political and criminal justice system between Taiwan, Singapore, and the United States. Today, the first presenter mentioned about transitional justice, and this becomes an interesting question. Is Taiwan's justice system mature enough? This research will discuss the diversity of criminal system and value between countries, and clarify how our criminal policy and judicial function being influenced by the interaction of political, economic, social, and legal factors. The methodology used in this research is the combination of theoretical discussion and survey study. Now let us begin. Universally in the legislating process, the arguments of liberalists and retributivists are two major theories debating about the use of punishment. Liberalists argues punishment has no deterrent effect, while retributivists argues punishment could deter potential offenders. Under liberalism, some common punishments are like the fine system, mandatory remedy, crime corrective service, and so on. While under retributivism, there comes the death penalty, caning penalty, and so on. Speaking of the caning penalty, what is it exactly? Defined by the West, the caning penalty is an uncivilized punishment still being practiced in some countries. The caning process is conducted by a prison officer using a cane to hit the buttock of the person who received this punishment. In Singapore, after years of the caning enforcement, they believe they have one of the best public securities in the world today. Taking a look at the United Nations report on global criminal statistic per capita, indeed, Singapore is almost at the bottom with only 4.9 per thousand people, while Taiwan is 8 times more than Singapore with 32 per thousand people, and the United States is ranked top 10 with 80 per thousand people. These three countries are all very advanced and developed, but how come the level of crime deterrence can be so different? It is commonly regarded that the good explained in Singapore's instance goes to an A plus B equals to C. They believe the autocratic regime used in the political system, plus the so-called uncivilized caning penalty, equals to Singapore authorities rules with brutality and citizens live under fear. However, considering the fact that there are many autocracies around the world, but very few of them match Singapore's level of crime deterrence, therefore, political system should not be used as the only interpretation in Singapore's instance. In 1994, the flogging of Michael Fay astounded the world, the story about the struggling between retributivism and liberalism on international stage. Michael Fay, an 18-year-old American, was ordered 6 lashes of the caning penalty by the Singaporean court for the offense of vandalism. Michael Fay's mischief behavior involved tearing down traffic signals and spraying paints on cars. But Singapore is not a place for foreigners to play nonsense. This event even attracted the world attention, particularly when Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States, implored Singapore to pardon Michael Fay. This event is not a simple political struggle between Lee Kuan Yew and Bill Clinton, but a national race that involved the great American dignity versus Singapore's essence of economic surviving principle. As might expect, there is quite a number of commentators describing this affair as a collision of two bipolar cultures, as an instance of Western crime meeting Eastern justice, as another instance of the American political imperialism versus Singapore's demand for social order. In the story, eventually, Michael Fay was flogged 4 times and sent back to the States, but the story has not yet come to the end. In 1994, the same year, but after Michael Fay was flogged, Singapore's bid to host the World Trade Organization meeting was undermined, was being destroyed, and this is believed to be the result of the American discontentment, the American dissatisfaction toward the flogging of Michael Fay. Come to think about this event, why did Singapore insist the caning enforcement, despite the American might revenge on this issue? And what exactly is the power that lies in retributivism that even the Taiwan legislator advocate the use of retributivism, the use of caning penalty to fight against crime? But something to be sure is Taiwan is not Singapore and Taiwan is not the US, so Taiwan should develop its own system of value in criminal policy. However, in recent years, the news of the European Union Human Rights Association urging Taiwan to abolish the death penalty is a very practical example of Western value imposing on Eastern society. So which is the better solution in Taiwan's case, retributivism or liberalism? Well, government officials and public opinion seems to have very different reflections upon this issue. To cite from the official statement of the Judicial Yuan, the concept of punitive sentence is outdated. Modern criminal law has been transformed from punitive sentence to corrective sentence. The judicial officials, they use the word outdated to describe retributivism. Well, they use the word modern to praise liberalism. But we must face the reality. Life is not waiting to be dealt a good hand, but instead playing a bad hand well. This summer, I dispatched 100 questionnaires to the public and recycled 93 of them back. In the midst of the Taiwanese opinion toward the public security issues, three obvious means, 3.84, 55, and 75, indicates generally a majority of the Taiwanese, they are dissatisfied with the public security, and they do not believe the criminal system is able to bring back criminal justice. Thereby, they wish the judicial system to be reformed. In the related issues to the legislation of caning penalty, again, the majority of Taiwanese, they incline to support the legislation of the caning penalty, despite it might cause negative impact to Taiwan on foreign relations. So it is more than obvious the Taiwanese prefer retributivism to liberalism. But why do judicial officials insist on liberalism? Is Western value really better than Eastern value? And should retributivism be abolished in order to fit into the mainstream of contemporary liberal value? Well, again, I must emphasize, this research does not focus on the disapproval of liberalism, but considering the unique circumstance of one country. How could it be said that the Eastern societies are rational, are clever enough to embrace and adopt liberalism in the establishment of criminal policy without considering the unique circumstance in their country? To back up my argument, we must find out how are liberalism and retributivism working in US and Singapore. In the failure of the US judicial system on crime deterrence, it should be an A plus B plus C equals to D. First of all, symbolic reasons corrupted the criminal system. Secondly, the separation of governmental power into state and federal system weakens the legislating power. And moreover, there are more and more states have abolished the death penalty. This all in all result in violent crimes raised 560% since the 60s. And coming to Singapore's real successful case of crime deterrence, it should be an A plus B bigger than C equals to D. To elaborate, Singapore government's determination to maintain its economic survival principle, plus citizens' demand for social order, make individual rights and values less important than the interests of the majority. So, apparently, whether using liberalism or retributivism as a major in criminal policy should not be decided by the small part of people simply because they favor the Western value. Some suggestion I want to give to Taiwan on crime deterrence. Firstly, we could transform the legal system from civil law to common law. In civil law countries, the phenomenon of judge taking bribe, taking illegal money is very common because the judge has too much depend on the written collections of law. In common law, the first specific feature is the body of precedent. The body of precedent means if a similar dispute has already been solved, then in the future, the other judge has to make the same prior decision as before. And the second feature of the common law is the jury system. The jury system means citizens are able to participate in the trial process, thereby making the judgment more acceptable to the public because it will more likely reflect public opinion. And last but not least, emphasize on retributive punishment like the caning penalty. The intriguing part is that though Taiwan is a democratic-based society, but do civil rights, do political rights have to be sacrificed under political system like Singapore? Well, the answer is no. As a matter of fact, retributivism, punitive sentence, corporal punishment, they are never being prohibited in the Constitution as long as they are not applied on administration punishment to limit citizens' political rights. The power of flogging should play a role in the criminal system if this is the will of the majority. And only by listening and respecting public opinion could Taiwan practice the essence of the Summing Doctrine, of the people, by the people, and for the people. It should also be noted that the adoption of caning penalty in Taiwan needs some factor analysis. For example, in Malaysia, it has the caning penalty, but because it might involve religious concern, because Malaysia literally is an Islamic-based society, In the future, I will explore into these new areas and generate a more comprehensive research. This is the presentation today. Thank you for listening and have a good day.
Thank you for your presentation. Let's welcome
influence the consumer decision making and consumption decision that are dominated consumers' consumption on cultural